Right, so I've got the starter here, and can you just bring the camera over? Can you see all the bubbles? So this is already fermented, and this was done last night. I think it was about 7:30, and now it's 11:30. So the starter is ready. Also, the other thing is, I think I forgot to mention, was that when you use the water for the starter, when you're feeding it with the flour and water, the water has to be either filtered water, or what you can do is boil it in the kettle and then leave the kettle, let the water cool, and once it's cold you can use that. But it mustn't be water straight from the tap. Otherwise you're not going to get your starter to ferment. Okay, so that's done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour some of the starter, and this recipe I'm making one loaf, so it's usually 500 grams of flour. 500 grams of flour. So I'm just getting the scales back to 0, and then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pour in the starter, which I'm going to do approximately 300. So just over 300. I mean, sometimes I put more in, it doesn't matter. And I'll leave behind some. What I'll do with this is, there's a small amount left there, and I'd say that will be, let's wait, approximately, sorry, bear with me, there. So I've got approximately, say about, just over 300 grams of starter left. So what I'll do is later I'm going to feed it again before I put it back in the fridge. So I'll add again about 150 grams of flour, the bread flour, and about same amount of water, and give it a good stir, and then I'll put it back in the fridge for next week when I'll take it out on the Friday and feed it again, preparing for making more bread. Right, okay, so there I've got the starter, and in that I'm going to put some salt, because what I usually do is this measuring lark, I do a very little of that. I mean, I just add things, because I know now I've been making it for such a long time. So I can sort of improvise as well. So there we are. I've added the salt. And what I'm going to do next is add some of the filtered water, just a small amount. And just give the starter a good stir. Just add a little bit more. I've added about possibly some 150 of water, but just approximate, just to ensure that it's a little bit looser, and the salt is more or less dissolved. Right, now what I will do is I'm going to add the flour. And then what I'll do is I will also, I've got the water close by, and after that, any more water that's needed, I will add it. Right, so what I do is, you can, if you're just making a white loaf, fine, you can just add, the Allinson's, it's strong white bread flour. I mean, I use Allinson's, I've got used to it now, but you can use any type. So I'm going to add approximately, let's have a look, it should be approximately about 500 altogether. So what I'll do is I'll add about just over 300 of this. Now I also like, with my loaf, I like a little bit of dark rye, just gives it more flavour, and sometimes I also use spelt flour, but the thing is I haven't got any spelt this week, so I'm just going to use a little bit of rye, say about just 2 of these. Well, they're not tablespoons, they're bigger than tablespoons, but say about 100 grams of that. So I've used the dark rye, so I've got the dark rye here that I use, and as I said, that gives it a little bit more flavour. You can use spelt as well. Right, so altogether I've got in there just over, it's about 400 and, let me just add a little bit more. There we go, that's 500. I'll give it a stir. And sometimes what happens is I do have to add a little bit more flour, because what I've done is, you know, if I've added maybe a little bit extra water and it's a bit thin, and then what I'll do is on some occasions I need to add a little bit more flour, doesn't matter, and sometimes I have to add a little bit of more water. Now the thing is, this is very, very similar to how you would need flour for chapatis, so it's no different. So what I usually do is, once I've got it to that sort of stage, just stirred, then what I usually do is leave the flour just to settle a little bit, the dough, for about 10 minutes, and then what I'll do is I'll come back to it again, and it's just more pliable then. So we've got to that stage, and what I'm going to do is just cover it just with a tea towel for about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back to it. Right.